It doesn't matter how you get there, so long as you take the journey. Come along as I adventure finding rainbows, smiling along the way, and experience another educational moment. Welcome to Trevi Fountain. It is one of the most famous and iconic landmarks in Rome. The fountain dates back to ancient Roman times, but the current structure was completed in 1762 by the architect Nicola Salvi under the commission of Pope Clement XII. The fountain stands at the junction of three roads, or tre vie, which is where it gets its name. Trevi Fountain is the largest Baroque fountain in Rome, standing about 26.3 meters high and 49.15 meters in width. The fountain's backdrop is the Palazzo Poli. The central figure of Trevi is Neptune, the god of the sea, riding a chariot pulled by two sea horses. One seahorse is calm, representing the tranquility of the sea, while the other is more turbulent, symbolizing its unpredictable nature. According to tradition, if you throw a coin over your left shoulder using your right hand, you ensure a return to Rome. Throw a second coin and you'll find love, and a third coin ensures marriage. The Trevi Fountain has undergone various restorations over the years to preserve its beauty and structural integrity, with the most recent major restoration being completed in 2015 and sponsored by the Italian fashion house of Fendi. Trevi Fountain has been featured in several films, most notably in Federico Fellini's La Dolce Vita, where Anita Ekberg wades into the fountain. In the fountain's piazza, there is a not particularly spectacular church with a strange claim to fame. In it, the hearts and intestines of several centuries' worth of popes. According to legend, the church was built on the site of a spring that burst from the earth after the beheading of St. Paul at one of three sites where his head is said to have bounced off the ground. This is a view walking down Via George Washington, headed towards the National Gallery of Modern Art. The gallery was created in 1883 to house over 20,000 artworks from different periods and styles in the newly unified Italian state as contemporary works of art. The gallery is in the Palazzo delle Belle Arti, which is close to the Villa Borghese and the National Etruscan Museum of Villa Giulia. Since most of the shops are closed on Sundays, I took the opportunity to venture into some of the parks and non-tourist related neighborhoods. The Muro Torto, meaning askew wall, is an ancient Roman supporting wall located behind the Pincian Hill that cuts through the Villa Borghese, running all the way from Via Veneto to the Piazza del Popolo. Arriving back at Piazza di Spagna, where we find the world-famous Spanish Steps, partly because of its position at the top of the Spanish Steps, partly because of its soaring Egyptian obelisk, and partly because of its lavish and perfect symmetry, this is one of the most theatrical piazzas in Italy. Flanking the piazza are buildings that have played a pivotal role in French politics for centuries. That's correct, French, including the Church of Trinita dei Monti, begun by the French monarch Louis XII in 1502 and stormed during Napoleon's occupation of Rome in the early 1800s. This azalea-flanked landscape design takes its name from the Spanish embassy, which was in a nearby palace during the 19th century. The Spanish, however, had nothing to do with the construction of the Spanish Steps, which were designed by the architects Francesco de Sanctis and Alessandro Specchi, and were built between 1723 and 1725. The design is characterized by a series of terrace steps, curves, and landings. The steps are wide and have a unique butterfly design. The Spanish Steps were built to link the Bourbon Spanish embassy to the Holy See, located in the Piazza di Spagna, with the Trinita dei Monti church at the top. The Fontana della Barcasia, which translates to Fountain of the Boat, is a Baroque-style fountain located at the foot of the Spanish Steps. It was designed by the Italian sculptor Bernini and completed by his son Pietro Bernini in 1627 to 1629. The fountain has the shape of a sinking ship. The design was inspired by the flooding of the Tiber River in 1598 when a small boat was left stranded in the square after the waters receded. The fountain was commissioned by Pope Urban VIII and is often considered one of the iconic landmarks in Rome. It features a boat with water overflowing from its side, creating a basin at ground level where people can drink the water or dip their feet, especially during hot summer days. The boat is supported by several stone tritons and seashells, adding to the maritime theme. There are two nearly identical houses at the foot of the Spanish Steps on either side. One is home of Vatican's tea room, and the other is Keats' Shelley House, where the English Romantic poet John Keats spent the last months of his life. The house is now a museum dedicated to Keats and his fellow Romantic poets. In Italy, the people love the Virgin Mary, and this column is a symbol of just that. The column is in Piazza Mignonelle. It feels like it's part of Piazza Spagna, but is actually its own square. What better monument to commemorate the Virgin Mother herself than a massive symbol of victory? Mary stands atop the column, and at the base you'll find four important Old Testament biblical figures: Moses, the prophet Isaiah, King David, and seer Ezekiel. The Virgin Mary holds a wreath which plays a part in an annual festival on December the 8th for the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. The column was raised by firefighters and still has a strong association with them. Each year, Roman firefighters place a flower wreath on top of the column in a ceremony with the Pope in attendance, which is obviously a big deal. The Fontana del Tritone, or Triton Fountain, is a Baroque fountain located in Piazza Barberini. It was designed by the prominent Baroque sculptor Gian Lorenzo Bernini and completed in 1642. The central focus of the fountain is a large Triton, a mythical sea god and son of Neptune, holding a conch shell from which water flows. Triton is depicted in a dynamic pose with his tail coiled and his body emerging from the water. The base of the fountain features four dolphins with their tails entwined. These dolphins support the large shell on which Triton stands. The dolphins and Triton's powerful pose contribute to the sense of movement and energy in the sculpture. Water flows from the conch shell held by Triton and spills over into the basin below, capturing the dynamic and fluid nature of water, a characteristic feature of Baroque art. The fountain was commissioned by Pope Urban VIII, who was a member of the Barberini family. It is one of several notable fountains and architectural projects commissioned by the Barberini family during the Baroque period. From Piazza Barberini, it's a short walk up the hill to the Quattro Fontane, aka the Four Fountains, which is an ensemble of four late Renaissance fountains located at the intersection of Via delle Quattro Fontane and Via del Quirinale, with a fountain for each corner of the intersection. They were commissioned by Pope Sixtus V and built at the direction of Museo Mattei, and were installed between 1588 and 1593. The figure of one fountain is said to represent the river Tiber. In front of an oak tree, a she-wolf, the symbol of Rome, was a later addition. From here, we proceed down Via del Quirinale to the Presidential Palace. On the highest of the seven hills of Rome, the Palazzo del Quirinale, which, since 1946, has been the symbolic place of the Repubblica Italiana and the official seat of the Presidente della Repubblica. The Quirinale has been for over 3 centuries the summer residence of the popes and the home of the kings of Italy. Due to its elevated position and particular healthiness, The place where the palace rises has been home to residential areas and important public and religious buildings since antiquity, including the Temple of Serapis built by Caracalla in 217 AD, from which originates the Discuri, the sculptural group that adorns the square. Parts of the fountain in the piazza were constructed from the baths of Constantine. It also includes Castor and Pollux, the divine twins, grabbing the reins of their clodding horses. With its 110,500 square meters, the Quirinale is the sixth largest palace in the world, 20 times larger than the White House. The palace sits on the site where Augustus' Temple of the Sun once stood. In keeping with the style of Rome's treasures, here is one of Bank of Italy's structures. The Via Nazionale is a relatively recent street, constructed between 1864 and 1871 in order to create an easy connection between Roma Termini and the area around Piazza Venezia and Via del Corso, at the time the most densely populated part of Rome. There are several five-star hotels in Rome, and here in Piazza della Repubblica there are two half-moon-shaped buildings. One building houses a luxurious hotel and overlooks a beautiful fountain in the center of the piazza. The Basilica of St. Mary of the Angels and of the Martyrs is a basilica and titular church in Rome built in the Piazza della Repubblica. It was constructed in the 16th century following an original design by Michelangelo. Other architects and artists added to the church over the following centuries. During the Kingdom of Italy, the church was used for religious state functions. The basilica is dedicated to the Christian martyrs known and unknown. By a brief dated 27 July 1561, Pius IV ordered the church built, to be dedicated to the Most Blessed Virgin of all the angels and martyrs. Impetus for this dedication has been generated by the account of a purported mystical vision experienced in 1541 by a Sicilian monk who had been lobbying for decades for papal authorization of a more formal veneration of the angels. It was also a personal monument to Pope Pius IV, whose tomb is in a part. Built on a pagan temple dedicated to the goddess Cybele, the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore was built in the mid-4th century under the orders of Pope Liberius. According to legend, the Virgin appeared before the Pope with the instructions for building the church, and the shape of the floor was designed based on a miraculous snowfall. Esquilino is the 15th administrative division of Rome. It is named after the Esquiline Hill, one of the 7 hills of Rome. Esquilino is a multicultural borough of Rome known for its covered local market, divided into 2 parts, one for food and the other for clothing and textiles. Until the late 19th century, Esquilino was considered a suburban niche in the city of center. Upon the unification of Italy with Rome as its capital, Esquilino experienced a rich and quick urban development. Mount Esquilino is the largest of the 7 hills of Rome. Esquilino is the international borough of Rome, a sort of Roman Chinatown with a multicultural spin to it. Porta San Giovanni is a gate in the Aurelian Wall of Rome, named after the nearby Archbasilica of St. John Lateran. It consists of a single grand arch built for Pope Gregory XIII. It was originally a large single arch devoid of any defensive tower or embattlements. It now consists of 7 vehicle portals and 2 pedestrian walkways. Welcome to, quote, Mother of all churches in Rome and in the world, unquote. St. John is not only one of the 4 archbasilicas in Rome, but it's actually the oldest and part of the 7 churches pilgrimage route. St. John is actually the oldest among the other papal basilicas, which are Santa Maria Maggiore, St. Mary Major, St. Paul outside the walls, and St. Peter's. The church's history dates back to early Christianity. It's interesting to note that the church and the rest of the complex are on Italian territory, but the Vatican has complete jurisdiction on the buildings, which also include the Lateran Papal University and the major seminary. Also, this is the church where the Pope lived up to the 14th century and where he used to be crowned at the beginning of its mandate. After the fall of the Papal State in 1870, this custom was abandoned and the ceremony takes place in Vatican City. Piazza del Popolo is one of the most famous squares in Rome, known for its grandeur, architectural significance, and historical importance. It is located in the northern part of the historic center of Rome, just inside the northern gate of the Aurelian walls called Porta del Popolo, aka People's Gate. The square is at the convergence of 3 streets, Via del Corso, Via del Babuino, and Via de Ripetta. The square is surrounded by notable buildings, including the twin churches of Santa Maria dei Miracoli and Santa Maria in Montesanto. These churches were designed by Carlo Rinaldi and are often referred to as the twin churches of Piazza del Popolo. They were constructed in the 17th century and are connected by an elliptical open space, creating a harmonious ensemble. The interior of these churches is richly decorated with artworks. The ancient oblique in the center of Piazza del Popolo is known as Obelisco Flaminio. It originally stood in Heliopolis, Egypt, and was later brought to Rome by Emperor Augustus. In the 16th century, Pope Sixtus V had it re-erected in this square.